Jack had always dreamed of a day like this. Growing up in a small town in Illinois, he never had the chance to visit a zoo. His parents were hardworking, decent people, but money was always tight, and trips like that were a luxury they couldn't afford. Now, standing in his living room in San Diego with his wife, Emily, and their young son, Liam, he finally had the opportunity to give his son a memory he'd longed for as a child. Jack ran his fingers over his son's small backpack, making sure everything was in place for their big day. "Did you pack your book about animals?" he asked, bending down to Liam's eye level. Liam, a wide-eyed 4-year-old with dark curls and an infectious grin, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Dad, and I put in my apple and peanut butter, just like you said." Emily, a petite woman with a calm, steady demeanor and a knack for organizing everything down to the last detail, laughed as she tightened her ponytail. "I think he's more ready than both of us, Jack," she said with a gentle smile, slipping an arm around her husband's waist. "Are you excited to see the lions, Liam?" "Lions, and monkeys, and snakes." Liam's eyes sparkled as he listed off the animals, his voice rising with each one. Jack couldn't help but chuckle. He looked at Emily, sharing a warm glance. They both knew this day wasn't just for Liam. It was a chance for Jack to relive a part of his own childhood, even if just vicariously. After a quick breakfast and a last-minute scramble to double-check directions and tickets, the family was finally out the door, piling into their old yet dependable SUV. The drive to the San Diego Zoo wasn't long, but for Jack, every mile felt like an achievement. He drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on Emily's, as Liam kicked his legs in the backseat, humming a tune from one of his favorite animal shows. "You know," Emily began, watching Jack as he maneuvered through the morning traffic, "I think you're more excited than he is." Jack laughed. "Maybe I am. It's just something I always wanted to do. I mean, look at him. This is going to be a memory he carries for the rest of his life." Emily squeezed his hand, understanding the depth behind his words. "You're a good dad, Jack. He's lucky to have you." The sun was shining brightly as they finally pulled into the zoo's parking lot. The San Diego Zoo was a vast, bustling place, sprawling over 100 acres, filled with winding paths, lush greenery, and animals from every corner of the globe. As they passed through the entrance gates, the lively sounds of chirping birds and excited children filled the air. Liam clutched his book tightly, his small fingers tracing the illustrations of elephants and giraffes on the cover. "Look, Dad, that's like in my book," Liam exclaimed, pointing to a large statue of a gorilla near the entrance. Jack smiled, bending down to his son's level. "It is, buddy. And guess what? Today, you're going to see the real thing." The family's excitement was palpable as they took their first steps into the zoo, unaware of the dramatic turn the day would eventually take. As they entered the zoo, Liam's excitement was impossible to contain. His eyes darted from one exhibit to another, each one more fascinating than the last. The towering enclosures, the exotic birds flitting between branches, and the distant roars of animals he'd only ever seen in picture books. It all seemed too wonderful to be real. Jack and Emily held hands, letting their son lead the way, allowing him to guide their little adventure with each new discovery. "Mom, look!" Liam tugged at Emily's arm, pointing eagerly toward a lush habitat filled with bright pink flamingos standing on one leg. "Why do they stand like that? Do they only have one leg?" Emily chuckled, kneeling down beside him. "They have 2 legs, sweetheart. They just stand on one to save energy. It helps them stay warm, too." Liam tilted his head, absorbing this new piece of knowledge with a furrowed brow. "I want to stand like that." He lifted one leg, wobbling slightly, causing both his parents to laugh. Jack tousled his hair. "All right, flamingo Liam, let's see what other animals are waiting for us." As they moved on, Emily pulled out her phone to capture the moments. She caught shots of Liam marveling at the long-necked giraffes, the playful otters darting through the water, and a sleepy panda munching lazily on bamboo. With each enclosure, Jack could see his son's wonder growing, his curiosity bubbling over in a stream of endless questions. Meanwhile, a man in a zoo uniform appeared a short distance behind them, keeping a careful eye on the family. His name tag read Paul, and he moved with a stiff, almost guarded manner, his eyes narrow as he watched Liam bouncing along the path. His face was expressionless, but there was a lingering hostility in his gaze, an odd intensity that felt unsettling. At one point, Jack felt Paul's stare and glanced back, meeting the man's gaze briefly. Paul quickly looked away, busying himself by straightening a nearby sign about conservation efforts. Dismissing it as just an overly serious employee, Jack turned his attention back to his family. Yet, as they moved from one habitat to the next, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Paul was always somewhere nearby, lurking at a distance, his eyes never straying far from Liam. Jack's brow furrowed as he leaned toward Emily, keeping his voice low. "Hey, have you noticed that guy?" Jack gestured subtly toward Paul, who was now standing by the lemur enclosure, seemingly focused on a pair of chattering tourists, but with his eyes darting toward them every so often. Emily followed his gaze, a puzzled expression crossing her face. "The zookeeper? Yeah, he's been around a lot, hasn't he? I'm sure he's just doing his rounds." Jack nodded, but couldn't shake his unease. "Yeah, maybe, but something about him feels off. I don't know." Emily squeezed his arm reassuringly. "It's probably nothing. Let's not let it ruin our day, okay? Liam's having the time of his life." Reluctantly, Jack nodded, letting himself be reassured by her calm tone. Yet, he stayed alert, his protective instincts on high, even as he tried to focus on the joy of the day. They continued their walk, eventually reaching a wide-open space where a group of schoolchildren were gathered around a guide giving a talk about the African savanna. Liam watched, enraptured, as the guide held up a lion's tooth, describing how these magnificent animals use their sharp fangs to hunt. "Did you know that a lion's roar can be heard up to 5 miles away?" the guide announced, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Liam's eyes went wide. 5 miles, Dad? That's so far." He tugged on Jack's sleeve, his face lit with awe. Jack smiled, feeling his worries momentarily fade. "Maybe we'll get to hear it today." But as they continued on, passing from one captivating exhibit to the next, Jack noticed Paul again. He was watching from the shadows, eyes fixated on Liam, his face set in a hard, unreadable expression. Jack's unease returned, gnawing at him. There was something wrong about that look, something that seemed to go beyond a simple job. A chill crept up Jack's spine, and he instinctively moved a little closer to his son. The family moved through the zoo, enjoying each new exhibit, but Jack's unease about the man in the uniform only grew stronger. Liam, blissfully unaware of his father's concerns, tugged them eagerly toward each new enclosure. "Look, Dad! Elephants!" he shouted, pulling Jack toward a large viewing area filled with the gentle giants, swaying rhythmically as they grazed on piles of hay. As Jack tried to focus on the elephants, he noticed Paul again. The man was standing near the entrance to the enclosure, staring at them with that same unreadable intensity. Jack felt his jaw tighten, and he decided it was time to put an end to this uncomfortable feeling. "Emily, keep an eye on Liam. I'll be right back," he said, planting a kiss on her cheek before striding over to where Paul stood. As he approached, he noticed Paul glance around, as if checking to see if anyone else was watching. Jack squared his shoulders, keeping his tone polite but firm. "Hey, excuse me," he said, catching Paul's attention. "I've noticed you've been, following us around quite a bit. Is there something we need to know?" Paul's face remained stoic, but a slight smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Just doing my job, sir. Making sure everything is safe for our visitors." Jack frowned. "I understand, but it's starting to feel a bit intense. My son and wife are here to enjoy the zoo, not to feel like they're being monitored." Paul's smirk faded, replaced by a blank stare. "Sometimes, people get too comfortable. Forget that animals aren't the only unpredictable things around here." There was an edge in his voice that unsettled Jack even further. Before he could respond, Paul turned on his heel and walked briskly away, disappearing into the crowd. Jack's gut churned, but he forced himself to let it go for now. He didn't want to alarm Emily or spoil the day for Liam, who was still excitedly rattling off facts about elephants to his mom. Returning to his family, Jack wrapped his arm protectively around Emily and gave Liam a reassuring smile. "Hey, buddy, ready to see some big cats?" Liam's face lit up, and he bounced on his heels. Yes, I want to see the lions, Dad. Do you think they'll roar? Jack chuckled, trying to shake off the tension. Maybe, if we're lucky. They followed the signs leading to the large predator enclosures, where the big cats lived. The area was set up like a small savanna, with wide-open spaces surrounded by tall fencing. The lions lay sprawled lazily on rocks, their golden coats shimmering in the late morning sun. Jack could feel his worries fading, and he focused on enjoying the moment. As they stood at the edge of the enclosure, Liam pressed his face close to the glass, his breath fogging up the surface. He watched, spellbound, as one of the lions lifted its head, letting out a low rumbling growl that echoed through the air. Liam's eyes widened with wonder. "Whoa, did you hear that, Dad?" he whispered, awestruck. Jack grinned, leaning down beside him. "Yeah, that's pretty amazing, isn't it?" Emily snapped a photo of them, capturing the father and son sharing a moment that seemed, for a brief second, to erase all the tension from the day. But as Jack glanced up, he saw Paul once more, now lurking near a maintenance shed close to the lion enclosure. His eyes narrowed and fixed on Liam with a strange intensity that made Jack's stomach clench. Jack's voice turned firm as he whispered to Emily, "Emily, stay close to Liam. Something's not right." Emily followed his gaze, her eyes catching sight of Paul before she quickly looked away, concern flashing across her face. "Jack, do you think we should report him?" Jack hesitated, torn between his mounting concern and the desire to keep the day as normal as possible for Liam. "Let's keep an eye on him for now, but don't let Liam out of your sight, okay?" Emily nodded, the tension in her expression mirroring his own. They lingered by the lion enclosure a little longer, keeping Liam between them, but the enjoyment was fading. The sense of unease gnawed at Jack's gut, making it hard to focus on anything else. Just then, Paul appeared, a little closer this time, positioning himself near the exit of the lion enclosure's observation deck. Jack's patience was wearing thin, and he decided that if the man continued to follow them, he would go straight to the nearest security station. But before he could say anything, Liam tugged at his arm, his face filled with excitement. "Dad, can we go see the gorillas next? I read all about them in my book." His innocent enthusiasm tugged at Jack's heart, and he managed to smile, giving his son a reassuring nod. "Of course, buddy. Let's go see the gorillas." But even as they walked away from the lion enclosure, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was lurking just beneath the surface, something he couldn't ignore much longer. And he silently promised himself he'd do whatever it took to keep his family safe. The family made their way toward the gorilla exhibit, moving through winding paths shaded by tall palms and vibrant greenery. Liam was still buzzing with excitement, darting ahead to see each new display, while Jack and Emily kept a close watch on him. But even as they tried to focus on the joy of the day, Jack's eyes flickered to every corner, searching for any sign of Paul. For now, the zookeeper seemed to have disappeared, and Jack tried to let the tension in his shoulders ease, if only for Liam's sake. As they reached the gorilla enclosure, they found a large crowd gathered around, watching a troop of gorillas lounging in the afternoon sun. One massive silverback sat regally in the center, his dark eyes scanning the visitors, while younger gorillas played nearby, tumbling and wrestling in the grass. Liam pressed his face to the glass with wide-eyed wonder. "Look, Dad, he's like the king of the jungle." Jack knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. "He sure is, buddy. See how he watches over the others. That's his job, to protect them." Emily joined them, her phone ready to capture Liam's expressions. "He's like a real-life superhero," she added, smiling as Liam's eyes sparkled with admiration for the mighty creature before him. Jack wrapped an arm around Emily, grateful for these simple moments of happiness. "You know, when I was your age, I never got to see animals like this up close," he said to Liam, his voice soft with nostalgia. "Seeing you this excited, it means a lot to me." Liam looked up at his father with a smile. "I'm glad we came, Dad. I love this place." Just as they were soaking in the moment, Jack caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. His heart sank as he spotted Paul again, lingering at the back of the crowd. The zookeeper's face was tense, his gaze fixated on Liam with that same disquieting intensity. It was as if he were waiting for something, watching and waiting. Jack felt his stomach twist. He turned to Emily, his voice a tense whisper. Emily, he's back. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't right. Emily's eyes widened, and she tightened her grip on Liam's hand. What should we do, Jack? This is starting to feel dangerous. Jack scanned the area, weighing his options. I think it's time we reported him to security. I don't want to scare Liam, but we can't ignore this any longer. Emily nodded, glancing nervously in Paul's direction. Agreed. Let's find someone to talk to. But just as they turned to leave, Paul stepped forward, cutting through the crowd to approach them directly. He had a forced smile on his face, but his eyes held a strange, unsettling gleam. Enjoying the gorillas? He asked, his voice oddly cheerful, though it carried an edge that sent chills down Jack's spine. Jack forced a polite smile, placing a protective arm in front of Liam. Yeah, we are. It's a great exhibit. Paul's eyes darted to Liam, lingering there too long before he looked back at Jack. You know, some kids don't really appreciate animals. They just see them as something to watch or take pictures of, he said, his tone taking on a cold, almost accusatory quality. It's good to see your son so invested. Jack's pulse quickened. He loves animals, he replied evenly, trying to keep his voice calm. And we're here to enjoy the day as a family. Paul gave a curt nod, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Of course. I just wanted to make sure everything's going smoothly for you all. His gaze lingered on Liam a moment longer, his eyes narrowing as if he were sizing him up, before he finally stepped back, melting into the crowd once again. As soon as he was gone, Emily let out a shaky breath. Jack, this is too much. He's not just following us. He's actively engaging with us. This can't be normal behavior. Jack nodded, his mind racing. We need to find security. Now. They quickly ushered Liam away from the gorilla exhibit, moving swiftly through the crowd. Jack tried to keep his voice upbeat as he spoke to his son, hoping to mask the tension in his tone. Hey, Liam, how about we go get some ice cream? I saw a stand near the entrance. Liam's face lit up. Ice cream? Yes, please. They made their way toward the entrance, scanning for any security personnel. Finally, Jack spotted a guard near the visitor information booth. He hurried over, gesturing to the guard with a sense of urgency. Excuse me, Jack said, keeping his voice low. There's a staff member here, a zookeeper. He's been following us all day, watching our son. It's making us uncomfortable. The guard's expression turned serious. Can you describe him? Tall, mid-30s, dark hair. His name tag says Paul, Jack replied, glancing nervously around. The guard nodded. All right, I'll radio it in. Please stay here, and I'll see what I can do. As they waited, Jack felt a strange mix of relief and dread. They had reported Paul, but there was no telling what might happen next. He kept a protective arm around Emily and Liam, his mind racing as he tried to reassure himself that everything would be okay. After speaking with the guard, Jack and Emily decided it was best to take a break and let Liam enjoy his ice cream, hoping it would calm their nerves and allow them to regain a sense of normalcy. They found a bench near the entrance, where Jack could keep a clear view of the pathways leading in and out of the area. Despite his efforts to relax, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still very wrong. Liam happily licked his ice cream cone, oblivious to the tension simmering between his parents. Jack forced himself to smile, ruffling his son's hair. Hey, buddy, is that the best ice cream you've ever had? Liam nodded enthusiastically, grinning. Yeah. Can we go see the lions next, Dad? I want to see if they're as big as in my book. Emily gave Jack a hesitant glance. Are you sure, Jack? Maybe we should. But Jack cut her off with a gentle squeeze of her hand. We can't let him see us worried, Em. We'll just be quick. Stay by the entrance if anything seems off and keep an eye out. They made their way to the lion enclosure, with Liam skipping ahead, eagerly pointing out different animals and sharing facts he'd learned from his book. The lion habitat was set up like a miniature savanna, with large rocks, tall grasses, and a moat separating the animals from the visitors. A sturdy, reinforced glass barrier stretched along the viewing area, giving visitors a close but safe view of the majestic predators. Liam pressed his hands and face against the glass, scanning the enclosure for any sign of movement. Jack and Emily stood close behind, feeling a bit of their anxiety ease as they watched their son's excitement. "There they are," Liam exclaimed, pointing to a pair of lions lounging in the sun. One of the big cats lazily lifted its head, blinking at the crowd with a disinterested gaze. Jack felt a small smile tug at his lips as he leaned in close to Liam. "Look at that, buddy. That's a real lion, just like in your book." Suddenly, a voice cut through the hum of the crowd. "Hey, Liam." Jack's heart froze as he recognized the voice. He spun around to see Paul standing a few feet away, an unsettling smile on his face. Paul's gaze was locked onto Liam, and for a brief, horrifying moment, Jack's instinct screamed that something terrible was about to happen. In a split second, Paul lunged forward and grabbed Liam by the shoulders, shoving him toward the edge of the glass barrier. Jack's instincts took over, and he lunged forward, but it was too late. Paul had lifted Liam and, with a brutal shove, forced him over the low railing, separating the public area from the lion's enclosure. Liam tumbled over the edge, landing with a startled cry on a patch of grass just inside the habitat. "No, Liam!" Emily screamed, her voice filled with terror as she reached out helplessly, unable to pull her son back. Jack's heart thundered in his chest as he watched in horror, frozen in disbelief. He could hear gasps and cries from the crowd around them as people began to notice what had happened. Some scrambled to find security, while others stood in stunned silence, watching the nightmare unfold. Liam lay still on the ground, dazed but thankfully unhurt. He blinked up at his parents, his small face a mask of fear and confusion. "Dad?" Inside the enclosure, one of the lions lifted its head, ears twitching as it noticed the small figure that had entered its territory. The massive animal rose to its feet, muscles rippling beneath its golden fur, and began to move slowly toward Liam. Jack's mind raced, desperation clawing at him as he searched for a way to get his son back to safety. He yelled at the top of his lungs, pounding on the glass with his fists. "Liam, don't move. Stay calm. Buddy, Daddy's here. I'm right here." Liam's eyes widened, his breaths coming in short, frightened gasps. He was too young to fully understand what was happening, but he could sense the danger, his small frame trembling as he watched the lion draw nearer. Emily was beside herself, clutching Jack's arm with a grip so tight it felt like she was holding on for her life. "Jack, do something. Please, you have to do something." Meanwhile, zoo staff and security guards were rushing to the scene, calling for backup and trying to coordinate a rescue. One of the guards shouted instructions into his radio, his face pale as he relayed the situation to his team. The crowd around them fell silent, watching with bated breath as the lion continued its slow, deliberate approach toward Liam. Inside the enclosure, Liam stared up at the massive predator, his small voice barely a whisper. "Daddy, the lion?" Jack felt his heart shatter as he watched his son, so vulnerable and terrified. But he couldn't let his fear control him. He had to find a way to reach Liam, to keep him calm until help arrived. "Liam," Jack called, his voice breaking but filled with as much reassurance as he could muster. "Listen to me, buddy. Don't run. Don't move. Just stay still, okay? Look at the lion and stay calm." Liam nodded, his tiny body trembling, but he kept his eyes on the lion as his father instructed. The lion, curious but cautious, stopped a few feet away, tilting its head as it watched the boy. Time seemed to slow as Jack held his breath, praying silently, hoping against hope that his son would remain safe. The air was thick with tension, each second stretching into an eternity as father and son locked eyes across the divide, clinging to the only shred of hope they had that Liam would be brave, and that somehow they would get him back safely. The world seemed to hold its breath. Jack's heart pounded so fiercely, he could barely hear anything beyond the rush of blood in his ears. His every instinct screamed to climb over that barrier, to charge into the enclosure and scoop his son into his arms. But he knew that any sudden movement could trigger the lion's predatory instincts, and that could be the end. He gripped Emily's hand tightly, grounding himself, forcing himself to remain calm for Liam's sake. Meanwhile, Liam lay on the grass, eyes wide as he stared at the enormous creature before him. The lion was close now, close enough that he could see the muscles beneath its sleek, golden fur and the piercing amber eyes that seemed to look right through him. He felt a terror like he'd never known, but he remembered his father's voice, steady and firm, telling him to stay calm. The lion took a cautious step forward, its gaze locked on Liam. The boy's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths, but he stayed still, his small hands clutching the grass beneath him. From where he stood, Jack could see the raw fear in his son's eyes, and it tore at him like nothing he'd ever felt before. "Liam, I'm right here," Jack called, his voice shaking but full of determination. "Just keep looking at me, buddy. You're doing great. I'm so proud of you." The lion moved closer, its large, padded paws making no sound on the grass. The creature's eyes were unreadable, flickering between curiosity and caution. The crowd around them watched in tense silence, some with their hands over their mouths, others whispering prayers under their breath. Several parents clutched their children protectively, their faces reflecting a mix of horror and empathy. Emily's tears streamed down her face as she clung to Jack, her voice breaking. "Jack, please get him out of there." I can't bear this," Jack nodded, his jaw clenched, but he didn't know what he could possibly do. He looked to the nearest zookeeper, who was whispering urgently into his radio. Another security officer rushed up with a tranquilizer gun, but Jack's heart sank when he saw the man's expression. He knew they didn't have a clear shot without risking Liam. "Please," Jack whispered, almost to himself, his eyes locked on the lion. "Please, don't hurt him." As the lion continued its approach, Liam felt a strange calm settle over him. In the midst of his terror, he remembered the story his dad had told him just the night before. A story about a brave young boy who befriended a lion by showing kindness and courage. It was just a bedtime story, but in that moment, it felt real, like something he could hold on to. Taking a trembling breath, Liam slowly extended his hand toward the lion, his fingers shaking. Jack's heart stopped as he watched his son make this impossibly brave gesture. Every muscle in his body tensed, ready to scream, to shout, to do anything to keep his son safe. But he held his breath, letting Liam take the lead. The lion paused, its gaze flickering to the small, outstretched hand. For what felt like an eternity, it simply watched, studying the boy as if trying to make sense of this strange, fearless gesture. Slowly, cautiously, the lion leaned forward, its nose brushing against Liam's fingers in the lightest of touches. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, and Jack felt tears prick his eyes, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and awe. Liam remained perfectly still, his fingers resting gently on the lion's muzzle as he gazed up at the creature, his fear gradually giving way to a look of pure wonder. The lion lingered a moment longer before it stepped back, its curiosity seemingly satisfied. It turned, padding away slowly, its powerful body moving with a grace that left the crowd mesmerized. Liam watched it go, his hand still outstretched, his face lit with a look of profound amazement. As soon as the lion was a safe distance away, two zoo staff members entered the enclosure with practiced efficiency, carefully and quickly moving to lift Liam back over the barrier. The crowd broke into applause, a wave of relief rippling through the onlookers as Liam was safely returned to his parents. Emily threw her arms around him, her body racked with sobs as she clutched her son tightly. "Oh, Liam, my baby. You were so brave. So brave." Jack wrapped his arms around both of them, his own tears finally breaking free. He held his family close, feeling an overwhelming gratitude that his son was safe, that this terrifying ordeal was finally over. Liam, still a bit dazed, looked up at his father with a small, proud smile. "Dad, I did it. The lion. He didn't hurt me." Jack stroked his son's hair, his voice thick with emotion. "You were amazing, Liam. Braver than I ever could have been. I'm so proud of you." In that moment, the family held each other close, finding comfort in their togetherness and in the strength they had shown. The danger had passed, but the impact of that day, the courage, the love, and the resilience they had witnessed would stay with them forever. The relief of having Liam back safe in their arms was indescribable, but as the immediate shock of the incident faded, Jack's mind filled with anger. How could someone entrusted with the care of animals and the safety of guests do something so reckless, so malicious? Paul's actions had put his family in danger, and Jack was determined to hold him and the zoo accountable for what they'd endured. After ensuring that Liam was comfortable and settled, Jack approached one of the zoo's managers, his expression resolute. The manager, a middle-aged woman with a worn but empathetic face, listened intently as Jack recounted the terrifying experience, her eyes widening with each detail. "He pushed him," Jack said, his voice tight with anger. "He shoved my son into a lion's enclosure. I want answers. I need to know how this could happen." The manager's face went pale, and she immediately called in additional staff members to hear Jack's account. Within minutes, police were on the scene, speaking with witnesses and gathering statements from the bystanders who had seen Paul's disturbing behavior throughout the day. Many members of the crowd were eager to support Jack, having been horrified by what they'd witnessed. Emily, still visibly shaken, held Liam close as she gave her statement to one of the officers. "I can't believe anyone would do this," she said, her voice trembling. "It wasn't just some accident. He was watching us, following us all day. It's like he planned this." The police took her words seriously, asking her to recount every interaction they'd had with Paul, no matter how small. Witnesses corroborated Jack and Emily's story, describing the unnerving way Paul had lingered near the family, his behavior growing increasingly suspicious as the day went on. As the investigation unfolded, Jack's anger only grew. It wasn't enough for Paul to face justice alone. The zoo needed to be held accountable for employing someone who would endanger visitors. This wasn't just about his family. It was about ensuring that no one else would ever have to go through the same nightmare. Over the next several days, the story spread across local and national news outlets. Headlines like "San Diego Family's Horrifying Zoo Experience," "Employee Pushes Child into Lion Enclosure" appeared everywhere, sparking widespread outrage. Parents across the country felt an immediate sense of empathy for Jack and Emily, and the public demanded answers from the zoo's administration. Jack and Emily gave a few interviews, hoping to draw attention to the issue and prevent future incidents. Jack spoke with a calm yet passionate resolve, his words resonating with parents who could imagine the same horror happening to their own children. "We trusted that we were in a safe environment, that the people here were responsible and cared about their visitors," Jack told one reporter. "But they allowed someone like Paul to work here, someone who clearly shouldn't have had that power or responsibility. We're not just fighting for our son. We're fighting for every family who comes to this zoo." The public response was swift and powerful. Parents voiced their concerns, some even boycotting the zoo until they addressed the issue directly. Under intense scrutiny, the zoo released a public statement, pledging a thorough investigation and promising changes to their hiring and oversight practices. But for Jack, that wasn't enough. He contacted a lawyer, intent on pursuing legal action against both Paul and the zoo itself. He wanted answers about their hiring practices, their employee monitoring procedures, and the measures they had in place to ensure visitors' safety. Emily supported him fully, though the legal proceedings were emotionally exhausting. Each court appearance and legal consultation forced them to relive that horrifying day, to recount every heart-stopping moment when they feared for their son's life. Liam, though young, seemed to sense the gravity of it all. He clung closely to his parents, his usual carefree spirit dimmed by the residual fear of that day. Despite the difficulty, Jack and Emily pressed on, refusing to back down. They knew that seeking justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about ensuring that no other family would have to go through the same ordeal. Their lawyer, a compassionate man with a fierce dedication to his clients, guided them through the process. "This is going to be hard," he warned, "but I believe in your case and I believe in what you're fighting for. The zoo will likely settle, but we're going to push for policy changes too." Months passed, and gradually, progress was made. The zoo, under intense public pressure and facing potential lawsuits, announced sweeping changes to their employee training and background checks. They implemented stricter supervision protocols for staff members, especially those working closely with visitors. The case finally reached a resolution, with the zoo agreeing to a settlement with the family and pledging to uphold the policy changes they had promised. Paul was terminated and faced criminal charges for his actions, ensuring he would no longer pose a threat to anyone else. For Jack, Emily, and Liam, the resolution brought a measure of closure. They had fought through the trauma and had emerged stronger, knowing that they had done everything in their power to make the zoo a safer place for families. And though the scars of that day would remain, they felt a deep sense of pride in the courage they'd shown, especially Liam, whose bravery had inspired everyone around him. In the quiet aftermath, Jack took Liam back to the zoo one last time. Standing at a safe distance from the lion enclosure, he placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "You were so brave that day," Jack said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You showed me and everyone else what it means to be truly courageous." Liam looked up at his father, a small smile lighting up his face. "I wasn't alone, Dad. I had you and Mom." Jack hugged his son, feeling a profound gratitude for the family they had fought so hard to protect. And as they walked away, he knew that they had emerged from this ordeal not just as survivors, but as a family forever bound by the strength of their love and resilience. In the weeks that followed, life gradually began to return to a new kind of normal for Jack, Emily, and Liam. But the memories of that day at the zoo lingered, casting long shadows over their lives. For Liam, the experience had left behind a complex mix of fear and awe. While he had faced down a lion and survived, the knowledge of just how close he had come to harm weighed on his young mind. Jack and Emily noticed small changes in Liam. Sometimes, he would wake up crying in the middle of the night, calling for his father. Other times, he would fall silent, lost in thought, his usual exuberant energy replaced by a quiet solemnity. Jack and Emily knew that helping Liam process the trauma would be essential for him to fully heal. They didn't want him to carry the weight of fear and mistrust into his future. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Jack decided it was time to talk openly about what had happened. He knew it was a delicate subject, but he wanted to create a space where Liam could share his feelings freely. "Liam," Jack began gently, looking at his son with a reassuring smile, "I was thinking about that day at the zoo. You know, the day with the lion." Liam looked up from his plate, his eyes wide but curious. "Yeah, Dad. I remember. I remember it all." Jack reached across the table, taking his son's small hand in his own. "You were incredibly brave that day. You stayed calm when you were scared. But I also know that it was a very frightening experience. And sometimes, even brave people feel scared afterwards." Liam's eyes grew misty, and he squeezed his father's hand tightly. Sometimes I think about it, and I feel scared all over again. I think about what could have happened." Emily moved closer, wrapping an arm around Liam. "It's okay to feel that way, sweetheart. What you went through was really hard, and it's normal to feel scared even after it's over. But remember, you have us here, always, to help you feel safe again." Liam nodded, sniffling slightly, but his face softened with a sense of relief. He looked between his parents, seeming to gather his courage before speaking. "Sometimes, I wonder if the lion knew I was scared," he said, his voice small. "When I reached out, I was so afraid. But he didn't hurt me. He just looked at me." Jack felt his chest tighten with a mixture of pride and sadness. He marveled at his son's depth of thought, at the empathy and curiosity that shone through even in the aftermath of such a traumatic experience. "I think the lion did know," Jack said softly, his voice steady. "Animals can sense things like fear and kindness. And maybe he saw that you weren't there to harm him. Maybe, in that moment, he saw you as a friend." Liam's face broke into a small, tentative smile, and he nodded slowly. Maybe he was just as curious about me as I was about him." Over the following weeks, Jack and Emily made it a priority to support Liam's healing in every way they could. They spent more time outdoors, taking walks in nature, visiting petting farms, and letting Liam interact with gentle animals to rebuild his confidence. Each new encounter helped Liam rediscover the joy of being close to animals without fear. Eventually, Jack and Emily decided that one final visit to the zoo could help Liam find closure. They contacted a counselor specializing in child trauma, who recommended a structured, safe reintroduction to the zoo environment with trusted guides. With this careful plan in place, the family prepared for their visit, their hearts filled with a mixture of trepidation and hope. On the day of the visit, they were met by a kind, soft-spoken zookeeper named Sarah, who welcomed them warmly. She led them through the zoo with a gentle, reassuring presence, giving Liam the freedom to explore at his own pace. When they reached the lion enclosure, Liam's steps slowed, and he looked up at Jack, a question in his eyes. Jack knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Are you ready, buddy?" he asked gently. Liam nodded, taking a deep breath before he stepped forward to the barrier. The same lion he had encountered months before was lying near the glass, his powerful frame stretched out as he basked in the sun. Liam watched him quietly, his face a mix of fascination and respect. After a long moment, Liam lifted his hand in a small wave, his lips forming a soft whisper. "Thank you." Jack felt his heart swell with pride and love, and he placed a hand over his son's shoulder, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Liam had found his own way to confront the memory, to find strength in it rather than fear. As they left the zoo that day, Jack and Emily walked hand in hand with their son, feeling the weight of their journey and the strength they had gained through it. Though the memories of that day would never fully fade, they had become something more than just a reminder of fear. They were now a testament to courage, to resilience, and to the unbreakable bond of family. For Jack, Emily, and Liam, that visit marked the start of a new chapter, one where they could finally leave the fear behind and step forward, together, into a future filled with hope. The months following that final visit to the zoo brought a new rhythm to the family's life, a blend of resilience and renewed gratitude. Though the memory of the ordeal lingered, Jack and Emily noticed a growing strength in Liam. He had faced down his fears and come out the other side, stronger and more confident. Watching their son's bravery had reminded them of the resilience that lay within their family, and they had all emerged from the experience more closely bonded than ever. Liam's experience became a part of who he was, shaping his view of the world with both a cautious respect and an undeniable sense of courage. Jack noticed the little ways this newfound strength showed up in Liam's everyday life. When he had a question or a concern, Liam spoke up with confidence, and in new situations, he seemed less hesitant, as if he knew he could face anything that came his way. At school, Liam began to share his story with close friends, learning to talk about his fear and bravery openly. His teachers noticed a shift in him as well, and some even reached out to Jack and Emily, remarking on the maturity that Liam displayed, a rare quality for someone his age. Jack and Emily took pride in seeing how the trauma had turned into a source of inner strength for him, a quality they knew would serve him well throughout his life. One evening, Jack found Liam in his room, flipping through the pages of his animal book, his finger tracing over the picture of a lion. Jack sat down beside him, feeling a quiet curiosity. "Thinking about the lion?" Jack asked gently, glancing at the familiar page. Liam nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Yeah, I think he was just as scared as I was, Dad. He didn't know me. I was just this little person in his home." Jack smiled, amazed at the understanding his young son had developed. "You're probably right, buddy. Sometimes, even the biggest and strongest animals can feel scared or unsure. But you were brave. You showed him that you weren't there to hurt him. That's a special kind of strength, Liam." Liam looked up at his father, a small, proud smile on his face. "I think I want to learn more about animals. Not just the big ones like lions, but all of them. Maybe one day I can help them, too." Jack's heart swelled with pride as he hugged his son. "I think you'd be amazing at that, Liam. And no matter what, your mom and I will always be here to help you chase those dreams." As the years passed, Liam's interest in animals grew, nurtured by the memories of his encounter with the lion and the support of his parents. What had once been a traumatic experience became a foundation for his future aspirations. Jack and Emily encouraged Liam's passion, signing him up for nature programs, taking him to wildlife centers, and fostering his curiosity. He excelled in his studies, especially in subjects related to biology and environmental science. In high school, Liam joined an animal conservation club, where he spoke to classmates about the importance of protecting animals and understanding their behavior. His story of survival and resilience inspired his peers, and he quickly became known as a passionate advocate for animal welfare. With each step he took, Liam felt a profound sense of purpose, as if that frightening day at the zoo had, in a strange way, set him on a path he was always meant to follow. One day, years later, Jack and Emily sat in the audience as Liam stood before a large crowd, giving a presentation at a conservation event. He was now a young man, confident and passionate, his voice carrying a sense of calm strength as he spoke about animal protection and the need for better understanding between humans and wildlife. In his closing remarks, Liam shared his personal story, recounting his encounter with the lion all those years ago. The audience listened in rapt silence, captivated by his words. "I learned that day that animals aren't just here for us to look at. They have their own lives, their own fears, their own worlds. My encounter with that lion taught me about respect, courage, and the power of staying calm in the face of fear. That experience changed me, and it's why I'm here today. Because I believe we have a responsibility to protect these creatures and to share this world with them in harmony." As he finished, the audience erupted in applause, and Jack and Emily exchanged a look, their eyes filled with pride and love. Watching Liam speak, they saw not just their son, but a young man who had taken his trauma and turned it into a source of purpose, a journey that began with a terrifying moment and evolved into a lifetime of passion and advocacy. After the event, Liam walked over to his parents, his face glowing with pride and gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply, wrapping them both in a hug. "For everything." Jack squeezed his son's shoulder, his voice filled with emotion. "We're the ones who are grateful, Liam. You've grown into someone so strong and compassionate. We couldn't be prouder." And in that moment, the family knew they had come full circle, turning a day of fear into a future filled with hope and purpose. They had faced down their darkest moments together, and they had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger than ever, bound by a love that had carried them through it all. As Liam entered adulthood, his journey continued to be shaped by the strength and compassion he developed through his life experiences. His passion for wildlife and conservation led him to pursue a degree in environmental science, focusing on animal behavior and habitat preservation. He took internships at wildlife reserves and spent summers volunteering at animal sanctuaries, determined to make a difference in the lives of creatures that had once inspired both awe and fear in him. His drive and dedication caught the attention of professors and professionals in his field, and he was soon offered a spot in a prestigious research program that took him to different parts of the world. From the plains of Africa to the rainforests of South America, Liam encountered species he'd only read about as a child. Each animal he studied, each ecosystem he helped protect, felt like a tribute to the lion he had encountered in his youth and the courage he'd found within himself. Jack and Emily watched with pride as their son thrived. Although the memory of that day at the zoo was still vivid, they had all found peace and purpose in it. For Jack and Emily, supporting Liam's passion was their way of ensuring that his encounter with the lion had a lasting, positive impact. They knew that by helping Liam follow his dreams, they were honoring the strength and resilience that had carried their family through those dark times. One evening, during a family gathering, Liam shared an idea he'd been quietly working on. Sitting around the dinner table, surrounded by laughter and warmth, he looked at his parents, his eyes filled with a familiar spark. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking a lot lately about everything we went through and all the support you both gave me, and I realized that I want to give something back. Not just to animals, but to kids who might be struggling with fear, trauma, or loss. I want to start a foundation, one that helps young people find strength and purpose, especially those who've had experiences like mine." Emily's eyes welled with tears, and she reached out to clasp her son's hand. "Liam, that's a beautiful idea. You've always had such a kind heart." Jack nodded, his pride evident. "It's perfect, son. You have a gift for inspiring others. I think a foundation like that could change lives." With his family's blessing, Liam established the Lion's Heart Foundation, named after both his encounter with the lion and the courage he had found within himself that day. The foundation offered programs that introduced young people to nature and wildlife, helping them develop confidence, resilience, and a sense of purpose. The foundation also provided counseling and mentorship for children dealing with trauma, giving them tools to turn their experiences into sources of strength. Liam poured his heart into the foundation, and it quickly gained attention for its unique approach. His story resonated with people of all ages, and he began giving talks at schools, sharing the journey that had taken him from fear to courage, from a terrified child in a lion's enclosure to an advocate for compassion and understanding. The Foundation's programs allowed children to connect with nature, to see the beauty and complexity of animals, and to understand the importance of empathy for all living things. Many of these kids, like Liam once had, found comfort and inspiration through their experiences, discovering a new sense of courage within themselves. Years later, Liam returned to the San Diego Zoo, this time as a guest of honor at a special event celebrating wildlife conservation. Standing on the very grounds where his journey had begun, he looked out at the families gathered before him, each with children staring up with wide, curious eyes. With his parents sitting in the front row, he shared his story once more, speaking from a place of gratitude, resilience, and hope. "Life has a way of presenting us with challenges," Liam said, his voice calm and steady. "But it's how we respond to those challenges that defines who we are. Sometimes, facing our fears is what allows us to find our true purpose. I was lucky to have the love and support of my family, who taught me that fear doesn't have to hold us back. It can be the beginning of something beautiful." As the event concluded, Liam spent time with the children in attendance, answering questions, signing copies of his book, A Lion's Heart, Courage Beyond Fear, and listening to their dreams and fears. He saw himself in many of them, remembering the child he once was and the journey that had led him here. When the event ended, he walked through the zoo with his parents, pausing near the lion enclosure one last time. The lions were resting peacefully, their powerful bodies relaxed in the afternoon sun. Jack placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, the familiar sense of pride and love filling his heart. "You've come a long way, Liam," Jack said, his voice filled with emotion. "I don't think that lion could have known how much it would shape your life." Liam smiled, looking at the majestic animals with deep respect. "I think in some way he did. He taught me to be brave, to respect others, and to find peace in the things that scare us. And he helped me find my purpose." As they stood together, father and son, side by side, Jack and Liam knew that their journey had come full circle. They had turned fear into strength, trauma into purpose, and together, they had built a legacy of love, courage, and compassion that would endure for generations to come. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and watch this next story. It's truly moving.